Yeah, dope. It's exactly what was supposed to happen. There we go. Son of a bitch, now the level's off. Cool. My level's off now. Hold on. Oh shit. Okay. Okay, we're dealing with it. The light's off, but it's fine. One of your friends is live. Who the fuck is live? Yeah, the light is off now. Because the light went out. God damn. I don't know what to do about it. Hold up. Hold the... I'm trying to adjust it, but I can't see until I'm in front of it. And I moved everything. I'm just not really gonna do anything. All right. I see what you're doing. Well, should I just move it? Just move it. Here, hold on. Let's move it. Kitty, go up here. Yeah. Maybe it'll be better. Yeah, now there's just the cat up there. Sweet. At least it doesn't glare. I don't know how long I could have dealt with that. I am conscious. I'm going to be real honest. I just woke up from a nap, so not everything really feels real yet. And I'm under caffeinated for this ordeal. So, this is unfiltered. If I say something accidentally offensive, I'm sorry. What? Did I lose my mod? This is really early in the game for me to be losing my entire life. I was behind the kitty. What even is real? That's exactly right. None of this is real. None of this is real. I have news for you. The second this live ends, this entire background is just paper mache. It just dissolves into dust and I retreat into my cave. So, who can even say anymore? You can't believe anything you see on the internet. Yes, they are. Dad got me new gauges. They're little crow skulls. They're so cute. I love them. Anyway, but yes, they are new gauges. Thank you. I think so too. Dad picked out some real cool ones. Does it? The gauges? Oh, the cave? What sounds... Oh, whatever it is, I'm sure it's accurate. You've done your homework. Thank you. I don't know if you're here, but thank you for the little kitty. I got a little kitty, and the note in the package said, you need a little small boy to lead the army of long boys. So I have a small boy, and he leads the army of long boys to steal my hat. They stole my hat. I always leave it in the kitchen. I don't know how it ended up in here, but it was under every single long boy. They were just sitting over it like they were hiding it. I looked for my hat for about 20 minutes this morning. Good. Okay. Thank you. They're already terrible chaotic demons, and the short boy is doing a stellar job of leading them to a life of crime. It's been fabulous. And I love him. You love my hair? Good, because I did nothing with it. I was gonna like wake up a little earlier and like try and do something with this, my human skin suit, as it were. And I didn't wake up in enough time to do that. I was real tired and I like zonked out. I did a lot of shit today, and I got no sleep last night. So, and then I had to wake up and go like 2 hours away for a doctor's appointment. Stressful. Anyway. And then I had to come back and then get my prescription filled after going to said doctor's appointment. It was a whole thing. Yeah, it was like, I didn't do anything to this. It just looks crazy right now. I woke up and you can probably tell I look like psychotic right now. And the light, I had the light adjusted so that my weird red skin would not. And then the light popped out right as the live started, and I plugged it back in and it reset all the settings. So now the red face is back. I look real shiny. It's psychotic looking, so I apologize in advance. You can't even tell that you didn't do anything to it. What does it look like I did to it? No. Yeah, I have to stay up until 4 a.m. anyway to feed Pond, or else she'll scream for the souls. And I have to go feed her. And she knows she gets fed at 4. So regardless of if you feed her at any other time, like if I feed her too early, she'll still like reset at 4. Every morning at 4 a.m. and reset. And she'll be like, more food, please. And you're like, but I gave you food early, like a couple hours ago. And she's like, not the right time. It was the before time. What about second breakfast? And then you're just fucked, right? So you can't go to sleep if she's screaming. So I have to wait until 4 to feed her. So I had to wait until 4, knowing I have a doctor's appointment in the morning, inordinately early in the morning, because that is the only time you can make it. And I have to wake up a few hours from now, and I have to wait to feed Pond to tuna. So then I go to bed, take a little nap, and then I wake up, go to the doctor, go all the way back, go fill my prescription, go home, eat, crash, right? So that was my day. See, the thing is auto feeders work pretty well for dry food. 4 a.m. she gets tuna pate. She doesn't get tuna pate at 4 a.m. Trust me, everyone in the house is going to wake up. So it would be hard to load an auto feeder with wet food. So I have to stay awake. And normally that's not a problem because, as you know, I'm a nocturnal being anyway, and I cannot infiltrate into the daytime. I cannot become a day walker. It is, alas, bad for my skin. And I immediately go into a high kind of stasis. When the sun's out, I get real sleepy and I knock out fast, which is the only time I ever have to go out in the sun are the early days. And when I go to work and it's still bright for maybe an hour and I'm real sleepy and real tired and I forget stuff and I don't know what's going on, the second darkness hits, I'm like, I'm ready to roll. Like, I don't know. I don't function well in the daytime. So it's not normally a problem. 4 a.m. is sort of like my noon, if you know what I mean. But I just got my flu shot. Come to think of it, yo, don't get the flu, guys. Get vaccinated. Get that sweet, sweet inoculation and go forth with a better immune system. I always get a flu shot. The second COVID vaccines came out, I got one. I was like, nah, nah, nah. Hit me up with the juice. I want to be inoculated against everything. Ah, you were late to get yours. Yeah, that's why you gotta jump on it. I knew I knew I had my doctor's appointment today, so I set it all up for today in advance. I was like, I have my appointment in the city in like 2 hours in the morning, and then I come home, fill my prescription at the CVS. I set the time for when I know I'm gonna be home from my doctor's appointment after about an hour so that I can set the appointment for the flu shot exactly when I'm getting my prescription filled. So I go up there and I was like, and she was like, it'll be ready in like a half hour if you want to come back. And I was like, no, I think I'll stay. And she kind of gets that voice where like, okay, be sure that I told you a half hour so you don't ask me in 5 minutes when your prescription is. And she was like, okay, if you're sure, but it won't be ready for another 30 minutes, okay, just so you know. And I was like, yeah, I know. Actually, I set up a flu vaccination for this time. And she was like, you made an appointment? In like that weird way, like she was like, oh my God, someone actually made an appointment. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, great. Do you want to go sit in the red chair behind the curtain? Like, I was like, cool, awesome. So I knew I was doing it all today, and I got my flu shot. I got everything. So I'm so juiced up right now. I'm not. Hi. Yeah, they like have all the heart bandages at the CVS. So I have my coffee here. So we're gonna see how long it takes to kick in. So hopefully not too long. I did eat before I took my little nap, so I have had human food, but also my stomach still hungers for the blood of my enemies, and there's nothing I can do about that, and there's not enough time now. I was like, it's 5 minutes till live, we can't handle this now, so we're all just gonna have to collectively deal with that if my stomach starts sounding like the coming apocalypse. I'm very sorry. Aw, thank you for the cat paws. Thank you, Dad. Just so you know, I just want to be upfront with everyone. I think transparency is very important to me, which is generally all my other lives. As you'll know, I do come out completely transparent. You can see straight through my organs. And that's just something that I really value as a person. So if you're still here with my skin suit completely on, I really thank you for that. It means a lot to all of the Eldritch deities that you stand up with us and for us. And we try and do our best to not murder you all. So I really appreciate that. And it's a very symbiotic relationship. Anyway. I know, and I put it off for too long. We got an extra long chapter today, so oh, thank you. I love the cat paws; they're so cute. But we got an extra long chapter. If you remember last week, we didn't get anything done. Nodi came in here, wrecked everything. No, I'm joking. Nodi is an absolutely beautiful human. We're all pleased to know Nodi. They meant no direct harm to any mannequins. They apologized to the entire mannequin community. And yes, it is. It's going to be Chaos Live. No, it's just a tiny bit longer. It's only like 10 pages longer, but it's just too long to break into 3 parts. It's just not. You couldn't do it that way. So we're just going to squeeze it all into one. Yeah. We all love when Nody stops by. They don't do it often enough. Oh, thank you for the corgi. I appreciate that. Yeah, for real. I was like, man, TikTok really did us bad the other day. But mainly, it wasn't even anything that they did wrong. Tell Toby I say hi. I even tried to reassure them. I was like, look, it's not you. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not anything directly related to that. I have ongoing beef with the entities that operate the TikTok platform, and they have ongoing beef with me for centuries now, and it's just been an on and off battle, and sometimes they just like to make life a little more difficult for me, in particular. And it's fine. It's fine. They're never going to keep me down for long. We have an outstanding agreement. So... thank you so much for the cat paws. Jesus Christ. Aw. Say hi to Nova. I say hi. Getting it together. Getting it together. We still got a book to read. If you don't remember where you are, and how could I blame you if you don't? And if you're new, you'll have no idea. So we might as well get this out of the way now. If you thought this was a normal live where I talk and you listen and we all just sort of hang out for a while, that's not the case. We have an agenda. This is a book club. We do things here. We accomplish things. We're going to read a book. We always read a book. We're reading a book right now, in fact. This is the 5th book in the series that we're reading. Yes, the 5th. In a series of 5. So if you came in at the very end and have no idea what's going on, you might want to visit my YouTube and catch yourself up. If you want to leave now, that's fine. That's your choice. If you want to stay and be a little bit confused and spoil yourself maybe a little bit, you can. And you can also return next week after you've listened to all the other ones. I still have to update. I know. I do. But I did just finish an ongoing project that I was paid to do, so I've been taking a little bit of a mini mental health break, and then I'm going to get right back on it right after Thanksgiving, so we're going to get the YouTube caught up, I promise. So I appreciate all of your patience. Thank you for understanding. You guys are always very uplifting in terms of mental health issues, and I never feel like any one of you wants me to sacrifice my mental health for content, which I appreciate. Because some people don't care about content creators. And sometimes we need breaks and we get burnout. And it's really nice to have a bunch of fans who are totally cool with I like that I'm just like, hey guys, I'm thinking about taking a little bit of a break. And you guys are the most aggressively supportive. You're like, yeah! Don't do anything. Throw your phone in a lake. And I'm like, I wasn't going to do that. And you're like, yeah, burn it. And I'm like, okay, thank you for being really supportive. So, I will fight those people in a Denny's parking lot. I appreciate that. Shout out to everybody who would fight in a Denny's parking lot. No nested knockout has got to be in here. Love them. We still get a fight in a Denny's parking lot. It's really fun. Yeah. If they'll fight in their parking lot. Oh no. Well, we can't do it in Denny's. I referee only. Like Lady Eva's ready and willing. No. But I appreciate that you guys are so supportive of that. And I will get caught up. I will. But right now, we're on book 5. And in book 5, the chapter selection is a little more spread out than usual. There's only about 5 chapters in this entire book, so we have to break them up in a really weird way. But we are going to get through almost all of, pretty much the entirety of the first way, which was, it's technically the first chapter. So if you aren't familiar with what's going on, we're reading a series about a necromancer named Cabal, who is trying to find the secret tenets of necromancy that will allow him to bring his wife back to life and complete mind, body, soul. And not a zombie. He doesn't want her to be mindless. He wants his wife back. And he's been trying that for 4 books now. And finally, he thinks he's got onto the right way of doing things. And to do that, they need to visit 5 separate locations where you don't exactly know where they are, but you kind of know where they are. And to do that, before Ninika gets there, he has to get a group together. So we got quite the campaign party going on. It's Horst and Leonie and Johannes and Zarenya. So we're going to see how they do. And it's going to be real fun. It's a trip. And I really enjoy it. And I hope you guys enjoy it too. There's a lot of reoccurring characters that come back if you're familiar with them. And I feel like you're going to enjoy it. So are we ready to get into it? That is technically the next chapter. 2. All right. Let's get into it. Oof. Okay. The First Way. Johannes Cabal, the Necropolitan. It is traditional to explain in great detail the necessary preparations for a lengthy quest of any description. Supplies must be secured, routes decided, contingencies explored, dwarves fed, and so forth. Johannes Cabal, by contrast, bypassed the first largely by the use of finances transferred to banks along the way, and the possession of letters of credit and cash in hand for more immediate use, while the second and third hands had already been decided in sufficient depth by Cabal himself, without reference to anyone else, thereby forestalling and muddying of the organizational waters by bringing the opinions of others into the affair. As for dwarves, they could feed themselves as far as he was concerned. He had no time for them or their interminable songs about gold. There were, however, a few problems that he was unable to address until they became immediate and unavoidable. "I don't wish to be the gooseberry who spoils the party," said Horst, "but Miss Zarenya here is by and large a huge spider. I'm not sure they'll let you on a train looking like that, ma'am." "Won't they?" Zarenya was miffed at such impoliteness. "Well, that's prejudiced and barbaric of them." She pouted and shook her head in a sharp little motion. "Does this mean I shall have to pass for human?" "I fear so," said Cabal with uncharacteristic sympathy. "How utterly loathsome," she said, and adopted an expression of great concentration. In juddering degrees, she leaned back so that the tip of her great abdomen touched the stone floor, and the legs on her right side drew together, as did the legs on her left. There were no gradual metamorphosis, nor even an instantaneous change, but rather the disquieting air of 2 figures being there, one far more substantial than the other, formerly the spiderish in the ascendant, and then latterly the human, although even that pivotal moment was impossible to judge or even to perceive. Presently, Miss Xerenia was a fashionably dressed young lady, with a small bustle where once she had sported a vast abdomen, a parasol, a hat, and even her hair had lost its gammon effect in favor of red ringlets that tumbled alongside the winsome face of her supernatural serial killer. "That's how I wear my hair," said Leonie Barrow. "I know, darling." The devil was unabashed. "It's pretty." Seeing no satisfaction imminent in the quarter, Leonie instead appealed to Cabal, who shrugged and said, "It is pretty." So, the matter was settled. The first 2 points of interest are in Abyssinia and Constantinople. Does anyone have any particular preferences? "Well, obviously, Horse and Leonie shall go to Constantinople," Xerenia said, as it is a matter of undisputable fact. "Why?" said Leonie, disputing it. Xerenia regarded her as if addressing somebody at a cocktail party who has just been introduced as the village idiot. "Because Abyssinia is frightfully hot and sunny and so forth, and you're all pale and interesting. You'll fry like a sinner, and furthermore, it'll bleach that lovely straw color out of your hair. It can't be permitted." Leonie looked askance at Xerenia. "You're pale too," she pointed out, "and a redhead. And, important point here that bears remembering, a devil, not human in any sense that would delight the heart of a doctor, denizen of hell and all that. Everything is a warm afternoon to me, from pole to equator." Horst considered this. "Doesn't that get boring?" "No." A thought occurred to Xerenia, and she partially lifted her skirt to show her ankles. She regarded them with dissatisfaction. "I'm sure that you all are thoroughly delighted to be bipedal, but really, you don't know what you're missing out on. So wobbly." She dropped the hem and looked around. "So, the scorching plains of Abyssinia for Johannes and me, and the louche pleasures of Constantinople for handsome Horst and lovely Leonie, then." And so, that matter was settled too. It is further traditional to explain, in great detail, every footling detail from the trip from here to there. Why this should be is a mystery. One suspects it has something to do with contractual obligations with regard to the number of pages for such stories. Given that it is a novel that you are currently reading and not, for example, a travelogue or a hideously inaccurate biography of Sir Richard Burton, we shall therefore dispense with the traveling beyond the following few points. It took Johannes, Cabal, and Xerenia 6 days to reach a small township in the northern reaches of the country. The trip was wholly uneventful, apart from the business with the slave traders. That all worked out well in the end, as Xerenia was given the opportunity to kill a few men, which improved her mood immeasurably. The rolling of the ship and the reduction in the number of legs she sported having combined to put her in a mild dudgeon. There was also an attempted train robbery, but those happen all the time, so it's hardly worth noting. It would be remiss not to mention, albeit in passing, the affair with the Tomb Guardians, and now that it has been mentioned, we may pass on. Also, a matter of some giant ants, but given Xerenia's true form and some chemical ingenuity of Cabal's part, dealing with them was a trivial matter requiring only the inflammation of some 5,000 gallons of aviation spirit and the destruction of a dam. Thus, after 6 days of restful travel, Cabal and Madame Xerenia arrived at the small township in the northern reaches of Abyssinia, formerly described by some European observer as being the seat of Emperor Prester John. This came as a surprise to the Abyssinians, who pointed out that they'd never heard of a Prester John, and that John was a fairly unlikely name for an Abyssinian in any case. Also, that they didn't really have an exact term for emperor in the European sense, such creatures being surplus to requirements to the people of the region. Hating to waste the datum, however, they diligently made a note and used it some years later. Therefore, of the name Emperor Prester John, the first word was redundant and the last unlikely. They didn't know what a Prester might be either, nor did the Europeans. But that didn't stop them from dismissing the Abyssinian protest as dilatory, distracting, and irrelevant. Wise heads in Europe had decided that, as it hadn't turned out to be somewhere in Asia after all, then here lay the empire of Prester John, and the locals were too ignorant to have noticed it, or they might possibly be hiding it along with the Ark of the Covenant in a hut somewhere. "So, is it here, isn't it?" asked Serenia. She was dressed in a summer frock of beguiling blue, unbesmirched by even a grain of dust, untroubled by any iota of feminine glow. Devils sweat when they want to, but it seemed like a lot of unnecessary work to her. "I thought I explained this before." Cabal had, indeed, explained it before, but every explanation had been drawn down conversational side roads by Zarenya, not actually caring very much, or they had been distracted by attacking bandits or giant ants. The Empire of Prester John never existed, per se. It is a chimera of a place, lent form by the optimism, they might have characterized it as faith, of hundreds of thousands of fools. Christians? I believe I implied that. Zarenya, whose view of humanity was necessarily alloyed by a lengthy experience, nodded. "I see. So, who's this Percy?" At which point the conversation meandered once more. The locals wisely shunned the strangers, although that wisdom was likely a function of a general distrust of a pair of white people, as if white people had ever done anything reprehensible in the continent of Africa. This suited the Caucasians in question admirably, as in fairness they comprised of a necromancer and a soul-devouring, albeit well-spoken, devil. And they were up to matters philosophical and bordering on nefarious, as so much philosophy does. "This is where the African location of Prester John's capital was assumed to be by the gullible of Europe," said Cabal as they surveyed a small town, bounded by low hills on one side and an arid plain to the other. It did not seem to be much of a seat of anything, least of all government. Scrubby trees, utilitarian buildings, bands of bush across the hills so darkly green as to be almost black, and a dusty pale red sand that colored everything. "Scenic." Serenia seemed disinterested in the civic aspects of the place. The citizens drew her attention far more strongly. She regarded any passing man with an unwavering stare, the gaze of a praying mantis weighing up her prospects. The men started by walking by and ended by scurrying out of sight, unsure why they felt so uncomfortable. "Scrawny creatures, aren't they? Still, soul's a soul," she sighed. "I'm making myself ever so available, and all I'm getting for my troubles is a lot of frightened looks and scuttling. Haven't they ever seen a gorgeous woman before?" Perhaps not, but if they have, I suspect that encounter involved blinking." "Blinking? Ah, I'm such a fool. I keep forgetting to do that." She slowly closed her eyes and opened them again. "There. Perfect." "Perfection indeed, Miss Serenia, if only performed approximately 27 times faster." "So critical. I do it easily enough when I'm more myself. I'm concentrating so hard on not falling over when I'm forced onto two legs, I forget these little details." "Blinking." "Blinking, breathing, bipedal locomotion, that's just repeatedly interrupted falling over, you realize?" She smiled suddenly, her mood mercurial but rarely melancholy for longer than it takes to say melancholy. "So, onwards to adventure, excitement, and oodles of delicious murder. How do we progress from this dusty-ass town?" This dusty town is our destination, madam. I thought I had impressed that upon you many times during the journey here.
Oh, probably. But you do that thing, and I get distracted.
Cabal favored her with a blink only slightly faster than her own. That thing?
You know.
He clearly didn't, despite her flapping one hand at him impatiently.
That thing. When you talk.
Cabal considered. When I explain?
That's it. I just go, ooh, another explanation. And then she passed the previously flapping hand across her face. Before it arrived, her expression was vibrant and engaged. After it had passed, her face was slack and her eyes rolled up. She held this for a moment before life returned. It's like magic.
She looked at him inquisitively.
Are you sure that you're a necromancer? You might be a tediomancer without realizing it.
Very well, said Cabal. The very definition of a losing proposition was to try to imbue Xerenia with any sense of gravity or seriousness. No more explanations.
Unless I ask, and then make them snappy, with lots of hand gestures, so I don't suddenly pass out.
That is hardly me, madam. You describe an Italian. Nevertheless, I shall be brief. You will have to imagine the hand gestures. This, and here he indicated the town, is a mundane location lent arcane significance via, and here he was interrupted by Xerenia's eyes rolling up, her jaw dropping, and a loud pantomimish snore ratcheting up out of her throat as if she'd swallowed a ripsaw. It's a magic gate, said Cabal. Xerenia smiled. The necromancer and the devil proceeded through the court of Prester John with great aplomb born of ennui in the former case and a degree of play-acting in the latter. Cabal walked steadily, his face stony, disregarding the fabulous sights of the most fabulous court the world had ever known. But that it had never been more than a phantasm of desperation, before a stern throne of ebony curled around with what seemed to be the tusks of mastodons, Prester John looked down serried rows of lesser kings, plenipotentiaries, lords, and recanted sultans. Cabal ignored them all. Xerenia waved and smiled and complimented people on their hats.
Well, this doesn't seem so bad, she said in a stage whisper.
They cannot hear you, said Cabal in his usual tones. They do not exist. They have never existed.
Hush! You'll upset them.
But Cabal did not upset them because they were entirely insensate to the presence of the interlopers. It was an endless moment of glory. The great Christian emperor, never defeated in war and the bane of the infidel Mussulman, accepted the same envoys, the same gifts, gave the same solemn nods of acknowledgement and acceptance for all eternity. A gorgeously rendered painting from an improving book for Western children that lived and moved but never progressed.
Oh, said Xerenia. Perhaps you won't upset them.
She crossed her eyes and pulled a horrid face in front of an emissary of the Tsar's. Beneath his fur hat, which must have been uncomfortable in that environment, he did not spare her a look, nor react in any way, or even sweat. She tried patting his face, but the solid flesh flowed around her fingers like motes in a shaft of sunlight and reformed quickly and perfectly. The emissary did not seem aware. His cheek and jaw had temporarily been wafted into dust, but carried on as he always had. This is nothing, said Cabal. At the always present risk of boring you, I must emphasize that this is only a gateway. What lies beyond it will be far more solid, more reactive, and infinitely more dangerous.
Good. Oh, said Xerenia. Cabal opened his ubiquitous Gladstone bag and removed the small tripod with the telescopic legs from which depended the silver plum upon its silver chain. He set this up beneath the gaze of Xerenia, who regarded it all with the least possible interest, saving her attention and commentary for the wardrobes of the assembled specters of those who had never died, having never lived. Cabal, in return, ignored her notes upon that man's novel fez with the mechanical mice peeking from it, or that bishop's mitre of golden crystal, or that near-naked slave's natural charms. Around the throne of the emperor and the subordinate thrones of 7 kings, the ranks of 62 dukes, of 256 counts and marquises, 12 archbishops and 20 bishops, Xerenia wandered, and none escaped without some comment, her well of observation proving bottomless, her expression boundless, her conclusions pointless, but diverting for all that. It was only when Cabal produced a syringe that her interest was piqued by the business in hand. "Ooh, narcotics. How very exciting. What will that do to you?" Cabal regarded the syringe, then her, and decided this was going to become unnecessarily complicated. In this, he was perfectly correct. "The drug will dull my mind, allowing me to enter the light trance necessary to precipitate the creation of a portal to the first of the pocket realities we must explore." "Dull your mind," repeated Xerenia, calculation upon her mind. "A light trance." She crouched by Cabal and looked him in the eye. "You only had to ask, darling. You don't have to resort to polluting your pretty little body to manage that." Cabal didn't like the way this conversation was going at all. He sought respite and technicality. "The technique is recognized. Indeed, I have experienced entirely satisfactory results." "I'm sure you have. And now it's time for some new satisfactory effects." She gently knocked the barrel of the syringe to one side with her index finger. "Now hush, and let me take care of you. Madame Xerenia..." She lifted the same finger and placed it to his lips. "Hush," she said with a subtle change of emphasis, taking it from a suggestion to an imperative, too compelling to require anything so gross as an exclamation mark. Managed Cabal, the last syllables of her name turning to molten butter on his tongue, a process his mind seemed to be emulating. Cabal had, upon his first acquaintance with the devil some years previously, wondered how a woman with 8 legs made such an infallible seductress, given the prevalence of arachnophobia amongst the common people. He had subsequently seen her practice her wiles, which, although educational in its own way, had not sufficiently clarified why her lovers and victims, a tautology so signally, failed to appreciate. That physical congress with a diabolical half-spider monster might not conclude with any sort of happy endings that they could later appreciate. Now, and accepting the point that she was currently passing for human, he understood all too well. Back in the days when he ran a carnival, one of his hellish crew had belonged to the same order as Xerenia, and she had carried a troubling air of incipient control around with her too. On that occasion, however, he had never had the displeasure or otherwise of having that mind exerted upon him. "There," said Xerenia in a little more than a whisper. "There you go. Easy to become stupid for me, isn't it?" Part of Cabal was outraged by this assertion. It was positing explanations for the effect he was currently experiencing. Pheromones, perhaps. A supernatural hypnagogic agent exuded from her skin and thence through his lips into his blood. A magical effect. As he considered these, his small internal committee grew smaller and quieter until there was near silence in his mind. It was blissful. "Now," said Xerenia. She straightened back to stand and looked down upon him with that habitual small smile on her lips. "Now you're all dull, just like you wanted, and no nasty drugs. Say thank you." Cabal made two small grunts that certainly sounded like thank you when they left the speech centers of his brain, but which seemed to have turned into syntactic porridge on the short run to his larynx, tongue, and lips. Still, they sufficed. "You're welcome," she gestured vaguely at the court of ghosts. "Now, perform your wonderment, Johannes. Take us where we're supposed to be." Cabal lowered his eyes to the dusty stone beneath his knees, and his mind twitched into a reflexive, simple way that was far too mundane for him to cogitate in the normal run of affairs. The silver plum weight swung violently upon its tripod, so violently that first this foot, then that lifted. Then the tripod fell over, as if kicked. The contraption tumbled onto its side, and the slight musical tinkle it made as metal tapped against metal seemed to raise the curtain upon an entirely new theater. The mirage that was the court of Prester John flicked away in that moment, as if it were merely a reflection cast upon the glass of a deeper reality, a truer, hidden reality, a terrible reality. It takes a great deal to frighten a devil, and Xerenia was frightened. "Johannes," she cried, "what have you done? Look where you've brought us. It's pandemonium." Angular plains crouched incipient and frangipane beneath a sky full of everything. If one took a surrealist of the first water, dosed him upon the most efficacious hallucinogens available, then took him to sit in Cthulhu's parlor for an afternoon, and finally gave him art materials to express the resultant inner landscape, it would still have looked like Market Rosin High Street on a wet bank holiday afternoon in comparison to pandemonium. And surely this locale was just as pandemonious as all that. Yes, but no. It certainly seemed like pandemonium. Hell's parliament, eternally adrift in the spoiled heap of the abyss where Satan dumps his mistakes. But as awareness returned to the briefly enfeebled mind of Johannes Cabal, so did his rationality, and he was able to settle Xerenia's mind just as easily as she had previously dulled his. "No, calm yourself. Pandemonium possesses no natural ground. Only the floors within the building proper. I grant you, there is a superficial similarity, but that is entirely due to the state of the sky, and that, in turn, is a result of an unfinished creation. It is a cousin of the abyss, I admit, but it certainly is not the abyss." Xerenia looked around, trying to bring herself back under control. Cabal wondered what had happened since the last time he met her, that the abyss had gone from a mild concern to a consuming terror. "You're sure?" She looked at him, seeking confirmation, as a drowning man reaches for a straw. "Madam, have I turned into a fish?" She considered this. "No," she said. "You haven't turned into a fish." At her first sight of the insane sky, she had instinctively drawn her head down, shying from the wrath of a cantankerous Lucifer. Now she straightened and looked at him, and then the sky with full confidence. "You're not a fish, so it isn't the abyss." "I feel no chaotic effects upon me, and for that I am grateful and relieved. The fish business is not something I care to repeat." "You made an adorable hake." "Madam," Cabal said with great dignity, "I was a halibut." The history of Cabal's first acquaintance of the devil Xerenia and of his brief time as a halibut is described in the story A Long Spoon, which, if you remember. Matters of Piscean nomenclature satisfied, the subject moved on to where exactly they had found themselves. "I understand your concerns, madam. The sky certainly has a certain abyssal quality to it, but the rest of the environment is a very different thing." He looked around the blasted wasteland, a frown forming. "Very different indeed." "That's your 'I'm having a clever thought' voice," observed Xerenia. "I know that voice anywhere. What is your clever thought, darling?" Clever is a very subjective thing, but you think you're terrifically clever, so we'll just take that for a read, shall we? What's the thought? Cabal gave her a sour look. For an inhuman entity, she was sometimes disconcertingly human in her views and insights. Mind you, they do say that you are what you eat. I have seen somewhere like this before. Well, it is a graveyard. That's like a social club. 2 necromancers, surely. Matter of the unsociable natures of necromancers aside, yes. But no, when I say I have been somewhere like this before, I do not speak of generalities. There is a distinct sense of... He broke off, staring down the ragged veil. Xerenia allowed her practiced disinterest to pause long enough to say, "Whatever is the matter, Johannes? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Oh," she matched the direction of his gaze with excitement. "Is it haunted? Tell me it's haunted." Cabal said nothing in reply. He started to walk in the direction of whatever had caught his attention, first in a distracted manner, then with determination, and then he started to run, leaving a baffled but increasingly enthused Xerenia in his wake. "Is there danger?" she called after him. "Is it dangerous? Should we make ready, or something?" He did not reply. "Good enough for me," she said to herself, and erupted into legs and knees and angora, her previous outfit flittering away into the gaps between realities where she kept her spare clothes. If you should be walking and suddenly and unaccountably smell lavender and mothballs, you may have just passed a corner of Xerenia's intra-dimensional closet. Resplendent in her natural form and exultant to no longer have to totter around in that ridiculous manner, Xerenia rose to her not inconsiderable greatest height, shouted, "I'll save you!" despite there being no obvious threat, and galloped in pursuit of her friend, the funny human Johannes. She reached him as he stood before a small funereal building of the sort that leads down to a family crypt. Its door swung open. Cabal stood before it as if it were the most horrible thing he had ever seen. "Stand back!" she cried. "Let me protect you from this..." "Building?" She pursed her lips and added conversationally, "I'm not sure you're in peril at all." Cabal seemed not to hear. He reached out and lifted the door's padlock from where it dangled open on the frame's hasp. It was in far better condition than the moldering stone it had once been set to protect. A very practical artifact in stainless steel. He looked at it, aghast, as if he held his own heart in his hand. "Padlock," Xerenia said informatively. "It pays," Cabal spoke in a low, dreadful voice, his thoughts materializing on his lips, "to invest in quality." He looked up at the lintel above the door. Engraved in the stone was the name, Druin. Oh, gods. What place is this? What have I done in coming here? "Oh," Xerenia found the change in Cabal's mood unengaging. "Angsty. I didn't think you were one of those necromancers." "You don't understand." Cabal walked a little way to lean against a table tomb, from where he regarded the crypt building with a strange mixture of disbelief and just perhaps fear. "Bingo! I don't understand." "As a word to the wise, I recommend you tell me why this ragged little stone box has put your knickers in a twist. Please don't be enigmatic. I've killed people for saying, 'I'll explain later.' Delayed gratification and I are not the best of chums." "It's the Druin crypt." "I can read." "I've been to it twice in my life. The first time He looked unhappily at Xerenia. She wagged her finger at him, then used the same finger to draw across her throat while she made a horrible cutting noise. "That's what being enigmatic will do for you. Fess up. What happened?" "You said you wouldn't harm me." "True, but, I'm a devil. We're good at the whole loophole palaver. I hate doing that usually, but who knows what awful things I may stoop to if provoked by my little pal Johannes being enigmatic and abstruse at me. She lowered her voice and the smile vanished. Pretty bloody awful things, that's what. I inadvertently abandoned my brother in there. And inadvertently locked the door? This is your brother the vampire, yes? A thought occurred to her. Wait a moment. Is this why he's a vampire? Cabal did not answer, which was answer enough. She laughed. Well, aren't you the loving brother? I had no choice, I'm sure. And the second time was to let him out again. How long did you leave him to stew? Cabal muttered something, but Zarenia's hearing was as supernatural as the rest of her. 8 years? Yes, I'm not proud of it, Zarenia shrugged. I don't care if you are or not. My moral compass is... She considered. I'm not at all sure I have one. I'm sure you had your reasons for abandoning your brother to 8 years of frustrated vampirism in somebody else's tomb. My main bone of contention is... What the Lucifer's cribbage board is it doing here? I thought this wasn't a real place. It isn't. I thought you said these places had been created donkeys years ago as a way of hiding the fountain of grails or whatever it is you think you're going to find. It was. Well, kindly explain to my poor womanly brain why it has a sky like the abyss and a landscape scattered with add memoirs to your family squabbles. She squatted back to the loom of her legs so that her knees rose like tusks around the throne of Prester John himself. Have you the faintest idea what you've got yourself and I remind you? Your poor, ill-done-to brother Horst, the delightful Miss Leonie, and my very own lovely self into? Honestly, Johannes, you're supposed to be the clever one. I'm very disappointed. Few things could snap Johannes Cabal back to acerbity with greater rapidity than personal criticism. I do not know, he said slowly and deliberately. Yet, this is not how the book presented matters. Yet it was so accurate in other particulars. Therefore, I must conclude that the book's author simply never traveled through into these places. Or deliberately lied. Serenia's eyes went wide at this revelation. Then she smiled broadly, a big, childish grin of delight. Oh, I hope the latter. Don't you see what that would mean, darling? She looked around the bitter wasteland, the tumbled tombs, the festering sky, as if it were the first sight of an empty beach on a summer's bank holiday morning. It's a trap! She clapped her hands, all agog and gleeful. So exciting! Cabal opined that it could only be a trap if it was impossible to leave the place using the route by which they had entered. This hypothesis, once mooted, was easily tested. They could not leave the place using the route by which they had entered. Cabal swore volubly at this discovery, which served for a QED under the circumstances. This is Ninika's doing, possibly. He glared at the land of graves. Here was the one when he'd been interrupted by a night watchman. There was the one where the coffin had been full of bricks, resulting in a complicated few days subsequently. There was no. He wasn't sure he had ever been in that tomb. Still, it looked familiar. Although it seems overly complicated by her lights. How could she have known I would find the book and recognize it for its importance? He ruminated on this for a moment, disliked the answer that Ninika was a great deal cleverer than he had ever given her credit for, and ran that train of thought into a siding where it wouldn't put his self-esteem at quite so much risk. So, what to do said Xerenia. She was still delighted about the whole state of affairs, on the understanding that presently a horde of hirelings of their shadowy nemesis, i.e. Lady Ninika, would turn up, and she could kill them all, eventually. There's little else we can do, except press on. Cabal lifted his bag from the unhealthy turf. He was unsure in which direction they should press on to exactly. Graves, crypts, and tombs scattered the land in every direction, and all looked just as uninviting as one of the other. As for that tomb, he looked at it again. He never forgot a tomb, but there was something ineffably evasive about it, as it refused to present itself, even as he mentally combed the memories of every graveyard, cemetery, burying ground, potter's field, bone orchard, and boot hill he had ever had cause to drive a spade into. It wasn't even that it was a commonplace design. An ancient and weather-aged pagoda, some 6 yards in height. Its surfaces plated in slabs of jade. Less a somber place of rest than a folly or outre statement of the occupant, or occupant's worth. A last resting place for somebody of great import, at least in the mind of their estate, to dream away eternity, even as. There must have been some subtle message in the way Cabal stumbled backwards, gazing eye widened at the pagoda that tipped off Xerenia to the possibility that all was not well with her comrade. "Is everything all right?" she asked perspicaciously as Cabal fell over. Cabal raised a quivering finger to point at the pagoda. I know where I've seen that before." "It's not yours, is it? Have you had some thrilling foresight of the future and seen yourself carried in state within its emerald walls? Is that it? It is, isn't it?" She considered the building with a critic's eye. "It's very nice, isn't it? I must confess, Johannes, it's not the sort of place I expected you to end up interred. I was thinking something more along the lines of a ditch." "No." Cabal recovered his feet and a few lamentable fragments of his dignity. "It isn't mine, but I remember where I've seen it before, and it's impossible that it should be here. Everything else," he gestured broadly at the tumbling necropolis, "has some personal residence. This shouldn't even exist. Not here." Xerenia rolled her eyes with impolite incomprehension. "Sorry, Poppet, but I don't have the first and foggiest idea of what you're talking about. Why shouldn't it be here if you've seen it in the real world? I say real world to be polite, of course. I mean that pit of a world you humans swarm about." "It wasn't in the real world." Xerenia showed a modicum of increased interest. "Hell, then? You've seen it in hell?" "I've seen it in the Dreamlands, in the great necropolis of Loneth, but the stuff of the Dreamlands and of the mundane world are entirely different. This place cannot possess both." "Copies, perhaps?" "Not content with taking landmarks from my life, this place contents itself to copy them too? No, it is the original. Impossible though that is, truly, this is an awful place." "Johannes," Xerenia spoke slowly and suspiciously, "are you frightened?" "No," said Cabal, but he lied. He had been sarcastic to demons, dismissive to Satan's face, and called Nyarlathotep a little bastard. He had been impolite to cultists, behaved indecorously towards his fellow necromancers, and had once tried unsuccessfully to upset a vicar. He had not wavered in any of these endeavors. He was quite capable of feeling fear, he knew, but it was a rare circumstance, and rarely, no, never, had he been so existentially threatened as he felt now. There were rules, laws, principles that governed everything. Rules, laws, and principles that controlled every falling raindrop, every whirl of an electron, every frolicking ghost. These laws he understood better than most, and those laws said this place could not be. A pocket universe containing material aspects of the mundane, mortal world was one thing, but it was the presence of an artifact of the dreamlands in the same place that put it all awry. It was tantamount to an electrical cell having two positives, or a planet failing to generate any gravitational pull. It simply could not happen. There were, then, principles to which he was not privy, into which he had never guessed at which he did not begin even to understand how he might understand. Not only had he built his house of science upon shifting sands, so had everybody else. Yes, he was frightened. "No," he said. "Where do you get these absurd ideas?" "Oh." She looked at the pagoda and added conversationally, "Oh, look, the door's opening." The door to the Jade Pagoda was, in fact, a low double door, barely tall enough for an average pallbearer to pass without crouching. The right hand of the two doors was slowly swinging inwards before them in inky darkness, uninformative in its totality, being the only thing revealed. "Do you suppose this is part of the trap, too?" Xerenia weighed up the possibilities. "I must say, as traps go, it's a little bit lazy, isn't it? Tiny bit short in the bait department. Why would we want to go in there?" She squinted, her inhuman senses apparently able to make something out of the pervading shadow. "Oh, it's all right after all. It's not trying to get us to go in. It's letting something out. Much better." Something shapeless and dark detached itself from the blackness and covered the ground from the open door to Cabal in a confusion of flutters. It spoke in a furious voice. "Cabal!" The voice was human. "I trusted you!" The voice was female. A hand rose from the tatters and wings of what the better light revealed to be a robe. The hand bore a gleaming, curved dagger. Cabal stood too astounded to defend himself, so it was as well that Xerenia was less impressed by the proceedings. She stilted forwards in a shimmer of legs and sent one of them rising in a sharp arc that intercepted the shadowed figure's chest. The figure emitted a loud "oh!" of expelled breath and flew back some 10 feet to land heavily, and the dagger landing safely out of its reach. The figure tried to rise, but Xerenia wasn't having that. In a moment, she was standing over the attacker, one foot planted firmly, indeed painfully, upon the assailant's midriff. The woman struggled, but Xerenia wasn't having that either. Now, darling," she chided. "Don't be awkward. Not when I can run you through so very easily. And I have far more interesting plans for you than something as wasteful as a dull old impalement." Behind her, Xerenia's spiderly abdomen started to pulse with a salacious anticipation. "No!" Cabal ran towards Spider and Fly, waving with both arms as if trying to stop an oncoming train. "Madam, you must not kill her!" "Ah, what?" Xerenia regarded the approaching necromancer with sour disappointment. "Really? You said I could murder people, Johannes. I must say, this outing is proving a bit shy on souls devoured, if you can bear a little criticism." Cabal arrived, puffing slightly. "Madam," he withdrew a notebook while he recovered his breath. "By my reckoning, on this expedition you have so far enjoyed the vital essences of 12 slave traders, 5 train robbers, and 8 cultists of dubious taste. You are telling me, and I therefore must protest, that 25 victims in no way constitutes a bit shy of the opportunities I promised you." "Do you have to call them victims? It makes it all seem so very sordid." What would you suggest?" Xerenia considered. "Playmates?" "Victims it is, then." "Oh, Johannes!" Xerenia was pouting unashamedly. "But they were a bunch of horrid criminals with stinky souls. This girl smells much nicer. Mayn't I just—" "You may not." Cabal crossed his arms and looked steadily up at Xerenia. Just a nibble.
No.
She tried to stab you. Zarenya rather spitefully leaned a little more weight on her prisoner, making the pinned woman cry out.
Lots of people have tried to stab me. It doesn't mean I killed them all.
He took a moment to think about that. Actually, that's a bad example. I did kill them all, but I don't want you to kill her. Why ever not? 2 reasons. She was communicated to this place during its creation and may be able to offer us vital intelligence about it. And secondly, he crouched by the prone figure and drew back the ragged black hood to reveal a woman in her mid-20s, pale of skin, raven black of hair, a stark tiara or crown in deepest ebon upon her brow. Because we are acquainted. Hello, Fraulein Smith. An unexpected pleasure. With a little chivying, Zarenya finally lifted her foot, and she stood by in a sudden silence as Cabal helped Miss Smith to her feet. Once she was vertical, he left her to recover her dagger and returned it to her, hilt first. I forgive your first instinctive reaction to seeing me, Miss Smith. The situation is unusual, and one can easily be forgiven for being a little fraught. I would ask you not to attempt my murder again, however. It would be counterproductive to both of us. Miss Smith gave Zarenya a dirty look, which the devil accepted with a prim smile. Did you do this, Cabal? Did you destroy the Dreamlands? I fear you overstate my influence, Miss Smith. If I have inadvertently damaged any of the Dreamlands, it is only your corner of the old cemetery of Loneth, Necropolis. Believe you me, I am as astonished by your presence in this place as you are. You are, in the vernacular, collateral damage. He was interrupted in his explanations by a mannered cough delivered from a moderately high. Ah, he said, but introductions are in order. Miss Smith, allow me to introduce the succubine devil, Zarenya. Don't tell her that right off the wicket, said Zarenya pettishly. We'll have nothing to talk about. And Zarenya, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Miss Smith, former necromantrix and lately the witch of the old cemetery of Loneth. Ooh, career change, said Zarenya with faux warmth. With whom I'm sure you'll get on famously. Miss Smith regarded the octopodal Zarenya with cool hostility. And you trust a devil, do you, Cabal? I do. We have an understanding. Madame Zarenya has undertaken not to harm me or my friends. I undertook not to harm you, your toothsome brother, or that handsome lady with the troublesome morals, not your friends in general. True, in which case I must ask you to extend your forbearance to Miss Smith. We are old acquaintances. Zarenya inhaled and sighed out the breath with bored disgust. You realize she's another debtor, don't you? I'm not quite sure how she's walking around, but that's not the mortal coil she was born into, although it sort of is. How is that? Cabal briefly explained that the body she currently wore was her dreaming form. Her actual physical body hadn't been inopportunely hanged by a rampaging mob while she was spiritually elsewhere, and her corpse subsequently used experimentally by another passing necromancer. I told you we were old acquaintances, said Johannes Cabal. What a sweet story, said Zarenya. I welled up at several moments. Very well, darling, very well. I don't much enjoy feeding upon the double dead at the best of times, and you seem nice enough, so yes. Consider yourself proof of my devilish wiles. She solemnly raised 3 middle fingers of her right hand, thumb across the little finger, and intoned the sacred oath. Dip, dip, dip. Smith looked quizzically at Cabal. What? It's complicated. Just accept the dipping. Miss Smith returned her attention to Zarenya and bowed. Your dipping is appreciated and accepted. And so their fellowship increased by 1. They considered whatever to do next. This is a deeply arcane situation in which we have found ourselves, said Cabal. I hope Horst and Miss Barrow are faring better than we.
And that's intermission. Yeah, absolute chaos. Absolute chaos. Hope you're all having fun with the chaos. So, kind of a wild chapter. Miss Smith comes out of nowhere. Collateral damage. Poor Miss Smith, you know, she was just chilling, kicking it as a dead witch in a jade pagoda, haunting her best death, you know. Deading her best death. And then she just suddenly gets transported into the worst adventure ever. I kind of love Miss Smith just because she gets the opportunity I would kill for. Just gonna haunt this jade pagoda all my days, giving prophetic dreams to passing necromancers. Gonna be chill, hanging with the ghouls. They don't even have to talk. And you never get any visitors, and the people who do visit get eaten by the ghouls. The dream, right? And then all of a sudden she's just dropped into fucking pandemonium and Johannes is back. You know, the dude who cut up her body and harvested her organs. You gotta just be the slightest bit salty that someone harvested your organs, even if you don't really miss them. Even if you're not totally chill with going back to your old life, you're still like, dude, my kidneys. What the fuck? And he's like, I don't think I'd ever see you again. You know, that's the only reason you did it, is because you never thought you'd have to confront the repercussions of your actions, Johannes. Yeah, they were just harvested by a passing necromancer. He was in the area. It was totally chill. So, I hope you're all enjoying it. Zarenia's back. The whole crew's here. Got the whole gang back together. And if you thought that we weren't going to have any more cameos of past characters, just you wait. We get more. Y'all are going to love it. I hope. If you don't, there's nothing I can do about it. And direct all your complaints to Jonathan Howard on Twitter, because that man's the author, not me. I didn't do this. All the faults of the book are his and his alone. Don't DM him on Twitter about... Yeah, like you get interactions between characters you never thought you'd see. You know what I mean? And I really love that. Like Zarenia meeting Leonie for the first time. Never really, you know kind of how that's going to go, but that's like fan fiction material of two characters that never interact and are thrown together, you know? You don't expect to see it in the canon of two characters that have no reason to interact all of a sudden joining a D&D campaign with each other, because it kind of does sort of read like a weird D&D campaign, you know what I mean? I kind of dig that one for this reason. This particular book, because these characters in the rest of the book have no reason to interact at all. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You, in a fashion, blink and you'll miss it. You see Nyarlathotep. Blink and you miss it, but in a way, in a very weird way. Thank you so much, all the cat paws, Jesus Christ. Thank you so much. I love all the cats. It's a little kitty, small boy. He's my new little baby. He goes everywhere. Because he's so small. I can cart him around. He's travel size. Okay. I'm done. Thank you for all the cat paws. You guys don't have to give me stuff. For real, you don't have to. I appreciate it. I love it. And he's so cute. Look at this little bugger. He's so... Look at his big little eyes. They're so adorable. Don't do that. Oh. You can visit. Do you have doubloons yet? What? No. What is... Okay, what is happening? What's happening? What are doubloons? Should I know? Have I been out of the loop so long? I was taking a mental health break so long that now I just, like, do not know what's going on. I saw a video the other day that was like, what? No. I keep getting videos about doubloons, and I don't know what doubloons are. And I was like, is this an actual concrete thing, or is this just a running joke for a while? Because I'm not up to date on what they actually are, and I've tried to figure it out, but I don't know. Ooh, chili. It's hard to explain. I can imagine that, because I'm very confused, and I honestly don't know either. I don't know either. So, I'm like, you know what? You enjoy your doubloons. When I figure out what they are, when they make like a WikiHow for old people, send it to me. Because I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, and I don't know what it is, and I don't feel... Is this a physical thing? Is it a transactional thing? Because I keep seeing somebody like, I gifted you a whatever doubloon, and I'm like, is this a thing, like a TikTok thing, like you can do it on the screen or something? And I just don't know how to do it, or I don't know what if that's something that needs to be, I don't know, or if it's like a completely, or if it's like a phantasmagorical thing. You know what I mean? It doesn't exist on the concrete plane. It's not a physical thing. It's not an electronic, transactional, fictional thing. It just doesn't actually exist other than in the imaginations of the individuals that are saying they have doubloons. If that's the case, I have 5 doubloons. And I don't know how I got them, but that's the amount of videos that I've seen on the topic, so I'm counting it. It's just some random shit that went viral. I was like, I don't think it's like... See, I was wondering if it was like a TikTok, but I was like, they already have a TikTok currency. There already is an economy on TikTok in and of itself. So why do they need a new one? You know what I mean? That raises the question. Why do we need to introduce a new currency into the equation? It would be like if there was already an established economy, and like, imagine, if you will, you were part of the US economy, correct? And you make money in the normal way, paper money, 1 through, whatever, how much money you have. And you get those in concrete physical bills. And all of a sudden, the US is like, we've made up a new number, and we're making a new currency in those units of measurement. And we're going to introduce it into the economy. And you're sitting there with all your, your USD, and you're like, but what about the old currency? And they're like, oh, we're still going to use it. And they're like, okay, well, is there a conversion rate? And they're like, no, it's just its own thing. And you're like, okay, so what does it do? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, what can you purchase with it? I don't know. Where do you keep it? I don't know. And it's just, it has that energy. to the point where I'm like, is it real then? You can't just make shit up and be like, this is how I pay for things now. And you're like, okay, well, what's its conversion rate? I don't know. Where do you keep it? I don't know. What does it look like? I don't know. I don't even know if it has a thing, you know? And then you just introduce that into the local economy. And now I'm sitting here like, why do we need new TikTok currency if they already made one? Is it real? Is it not? Is it just a video that went viral that I don't have enough information about? Are people making things up? I don't know. I'm intrigued and I want to know more, but also I respect and admire the chaos from afar. And part of me is like, I don't want to understand. I want to be confused. I'm sure I'll learn eventually as I go, but until then, I'm going to enjoy not knowing what that is or why I need it, if I even need it. Exactly. But what is TikTok got to do with it? You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing is like, this is a social media platform. And I get that capitalism has to make everything an economy, and that's why TikTok has a currency at all in any sense. But why does TikTok need it? Who made it? Who's done it? I have heard no information about it other than that. But this is going to be a longer bit, and we're going to start again here in a minute. But for right now, I'm going to pause you guys, and I'm going to be back just a minute. I got to take a break.